vulnerability versus weakness. In one of the earlier key differentiations, I had mentioned this client who I had worked with just yesterday, and she had shared about how she had recently learned that her grown kids had a half-sibling who was conceived when her kids were in elementary school. And so let's look at that when we're looking at this vulnerability versus weakness. My goodness, what she shared was definitely vulnerable. She was sharing something that had quite the impact on her and on her kids. Was it weakness, though? I certainly did not hear weakness in her whatsoever. Weakness would be a, oh, I'm a victim to life. Life is really hard. I can't get anything right. Weakness would be kind of this self-negating thoughts that if we believe them, they're going to color our world, they're going to filter our world in a way that has us relate in a disempowered way towards our world. And that does create a weakness. We're not living in our full power when we totally hold that. Now, that doesn't mean that bad things don't happen. Clearly, this woman went through something very challenging. She was vulnerable about it. But my goodness, I would not call her weak. Actually, I was impressed when she, I asked, would you like some empathy? And she goes, actually, I just really want to celebrate how far I've come since I found out about this a few months ago. I recognized that I had lost sleep over my ex-husband for years. I don't want to lose another night's sleep over it. So I'm doing fine. Now, that was pretty amazing. That was pretty amazing. That was not what I was expecting, right? But I'm saying that to illustrate this was not weakness. It was vulnerable. She was sharing from her heart. There was impact. It was not weakness. She was not being a victim to it. She was not holding on to those stories. She was not somebody who could be taken advantage of because she was showing some kind of weakness in her. This is an empowered woman who was willing to share vulnerably and openly what had been happening in her life just recently, what was alive in her. So it created a lot of connection too. There was a deepening of like, oh wow, what a beautiful woman. And we both felt that because she was willing to share vulnerably about what was happening in her life. So I want to invite you to consider that sharing vulnerably in the right circumstance, especially in circumstance where people are practicing these tools of nonviolent communication, of compassionate consciousness, it's powerful. It absolutely is life-affirming. It creates connection. It creates compassion. So let's do more of this. Let's do more of allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and recognize that it only becomes weakness when we start to go self-negating, when we start to lower ourselves, when we start to jackal ourselves. That's when we're alienating life, right? No bad or wrong with that. We can have empathy for that. The jackal's in pain. We can have empathy for that. But let's not confuse vulnerability with weakness. Vulnerability is beautiful, precious, and powerful.